Just imagine, one dark and frightening night, Daniel found himself at the bottom of a huge pit, surrounded by hungry lions. They were huge, and their shadows danced on the torchlit walls of the pit. It must have been very scary, right? But then, something incredible happened. Instead of jumping on Daniel, the lions began to calm down, one by one, as if someone unseen had whispered to them to be quiet. And you know what else? As Daniel prayed, calmly, hoping for the best, a bright light appeared, and with it, an angel descended to him. The angel did something super special. He closed the lions' mouths so they couldn't hurt Daniel. Suddenly, the place that seemed so scary became a space of peace and calm. The lions, which everyone knows are super fierce, looked like little lambs, gentle and calm next to Daniel. This shows how when we are afraid, we can still find peace and protection if we trust and wait for help. It's like having an invisible superhero by your side. An exciting adventure through the life of Daniel, a real hero with a story full of surprising visions and lots of bravery. Just imagine, Daniel wasn't a hero with superpowers like the ones we see in the movies, but he had something special, enormous faith and a heart full of courage. The story begins with Daniel, a boy who came from a very important family, having to leave the place where he grew up, the beautiful land of Judah. He had to say goodbye to the hills where he played and the temple where he learned to respect and love the God. Now, imagine yourself in his shoes, going to a completely new and unfamiliar place without your friends or family around. It must have been difficult, right? But even facing these giant challenges, Daniel did not let his faith waver. He found himself before kings and faced situations that seemed impossible. And the most incredible part? When he was thrown into a pit full of hungry lions? That's right, real lions. But believe it or not, Daniel did not let himself be carried away by fear. He stood firm, praying and trusting that everything would be okay. And didn't something extraordinary happen? Instead of becoming a danger, the lions calmed down beside him like tame kittens. Daniel showed everyone that, when we believe and have hope, even the biggest challenges can be faced. Before we continue, make sure you are already subscribed to our channel, and let's continue with this wonderful story of Daniel. A long time ago, in a difficult and sad time, the great King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon conquered the city of Jerusalem. Just imagine, he was a very powerful king and decided to take some of the strongest and most intelligent young people to help in his palace. Among these young people was Daniel, along with his 3 friends, Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah. They were chosen because they were very smart and full of energy. Then they were all taken to the great city of Babylon. Think of a huge city, full of people, with impressive buildings and lots of things going on. It was a vibrant place and very different from anything they knew. When they got there, something curious happened. They received new names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar, Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael was called Meshach, and Azariah was called Abednego. These new names were a way of showing that they were now living under new rules, in a place where gods completely different from theirs were worshipped. These new names were a constant reminder that they were no longer at home, and that they were now part of a completely new world. It was as if they had to start all over again, but they didn't let that get them down. Even away from home and with new names, Daniel and his friends remained faithful to what they believed and showed everyone their strength and intelligence. They were ready to face any challenge that came their way. Imagine being in a palace full of luxury and delicious food everywhere, but having to say no to all of it. That's exactly what happened to Daniel. Even surrounded by the grandeur of King Nebuchadnezzar's palace, Daniel never forgot who he really was and who he believed in. As soon as he arrived, the king ordered all young men like him to eat the same rich foods and drink the same wine as him, to become strong and healthy. But there was a problem. Many of these foods had first been offered to idols, and Daniel knew that this was not right according to his beliefs. He wanted to be faithful to his God, so he had a brave idea. Daniel asked permission to do something different. He wanted to eat only vegetables and drink only water. You might be thinking, wow, that doesn't sound like fun at all, especially with all that delicious food around. But Daniel was determined not to be carried away by temptation. Of course, this idea was not well received at first, After all, who would want vegetables when they could have the king's best dishes? But Daniel had something very special: trust in God. And you know what? God did not leave Daniel in the lurch. Even with such a simple diet, Daniel remained healthy and even wiser than the other young people who ate the king's food. This part of Daniel's story shows us how difficult but important it can be to stand firm in what we believe in, even when everyone around us is doing something different. And it teaches us that sometimes making the right choice can be challenging, but in the end, it's worth it. Do you think that giving up moments of pleasure for long-term results is a difficult act? Comment there, because I want to know your opinion about Daniel's act. Imagine the scene. Daniel, a brave young man, walks purposefully up to the chief eunuch in King Nebuchadnezzar's palace. He has a very special and somewhat unusual request. With steady eyes and a confident voice, he says, "Please test me and my friends for 10 days. Just give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then see how we are compared to the other young people who eat the king's food, and decide what to do with us based on what you observe." The chief eunuch, surprised by Daniel's confidence and a little skeptical, did not know what to expect. He was used to following orders, and the idea of deviating from the norm was risky. But there was something in Daniel's determination that made him accept the challenge. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe admiration for his courage. So, Daniel and his friends began their experiment. For 10 days, while the other young people enjoyed the palace's rich and varied dishes, they kept it simple, eating only vegetables and drinking water. Everyone in the palace was looking forward to the result. Would Daniel and his friends weaken and give up? But after 10 days, something incredible happened. When the chief eunuch went to check on Daniel and his friends, he could hardly believe his eyes. Not only did they look good, but they were even healthier and more energetic than all the other young people who ate the king's food. Their skin glowed and they seemed stronger and more alert. This small victory for Daniel not only proved that his faith had a strong foundation, but also gained the trust of those around him in the palace. And most importantly, it prepared Daniel and his friends to face even greater challenges to come. They showed that sometimes standing firm in our beliefs and choosing a different path can lead to surprising results. It was a lesson that, with faith and persistence, we can face any challenge that comes our way. As Daniel and his friends adapted to their new life in the palace, a mystery began to unfold under the starry sky of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar, known for his immense power, faced restless nights, troubled by enigmatic dreams that no wise man could decipher. These dreams were not simple daydreams. They were laden with mysterious messages that required urgent interpretation. In desperation, the king summoned all the magicians, enchanters, and astrologers in the empire. His order was impossible. They must not only interpret the dream, but also tell the king what he had dreamed, without any prior clues. Faced with this Herculean task, the wise men trembled with fear as they knew that failure meant certain death. The king's frustration grew, and with it, the threat of a mass execution. It was in this scenario of fear and uncertainty that Daniel learned of the dilemma. Moved by a courage that only faith provides, he presented himself before the king and asked for a brief period of time to find the answer. Daniel knew that, even when faced with the impossible, he was not alone. He and his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah joined together in prayer, seeking divine wisdom. In the stillness of the night, the answer came to Daniel through a clear and profound vision. He not only saw the king's dream, but also understood its deep meaning. With his heart overflowing with gratitude, Daniel praised God, the only one capable of unraveling the darkest secrets. At dawn, with the serenity of someone carrying the truth, Daniel was taken to Nebuchadnezzar. Faced with a palace eager for answers, Daniel began to reveal the mystery. He described the vision of an immense statue with parts of different metals, ending with feet of clay and iron. Without the help of human hands, a stone hit the statue, completely destroying it, and then turned into a mountain that filled the entire earth. Daniel explained that the statue represented a sequence of kingdoms, beginning with the golden head, Nebuchadnezzar himself and his opulent empire. Other kingdoms would come and pass, until finally a divine kingdom would emerge to establish eternal peace. surpassing all earthly empires. Impressed and humbled by Daniel's wisdom and faith, the king prostrated himself in recognition of the God that Daniel served. He then raised Daniel to a position of great honor, making him governor of the province of Babylon and supreme head of all the wise men of the kingdom. Thus, Daniel not only saved his own life and those of the other wise men, but also established a new chapter for the empire, one marked by the presence of a young captive who brought with him the light of divine truth. What an incredible story, isn't it? Daniel really is an example of faith and courage. I would like to know his opinion on this story. How do you think Daniel's faith impacted his life and the lives of others around him? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue this fascinating conversation. As Daniel consolidated his position of influence in the palace, intrigue began to brew in the shadows. Some of the nobles, consumed by envy at seeing a captive rise to such a high position, plotted his downfall. The favor and power that Daniel enjoyed was seen by them not as merit but as a threat, and the conspiracy would soon threaten not only him, but also his faithful friends in a confrontation that would test their faith as never before. As day gave way to night, the immense plain of Dura was transformed into the stage for a grand and imposing golden statue, erected by order of King Nebuchadnezzar. The statue shone in the last rays of the setting sun, a monument to the king's own greatness, whose order was unequivocal. At the sound of the royal instruments, everyone should prostrate themselves and worship the image. Those who defy the decree face death in the fiery furnace. For most, the statue was a symbol of Babylonian power and dominance. However, for three young Hebrews, Ananias, Mishael, and Azariah, now known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it represented a direct challenge to their unbreakable faith in the God of Israel. When the music sounded and the crowd bowed in a wave of forced reverence, the three remained standing, steadfast in their refusal to worship any idol. Quickly, the young people's disobedience reached Nebuchadnezzar's ears. Enraged, the king summoned and confronted them, giving them one last chance to obey. The young men's response was as courageous as it was direct. They were ready to face the furnace, trusting that their God could save them. But even if he didn't, they would not surrender to the king's demands. Nebuchadnezzar, inflamed by their boldness, ordered the furnace to be superheated and the three to be thrown into it, tied up and watched by the strongest soldiers in the kingdom. The flames were so violent that they consumed the soldiers carrying out the order. However, when looking into the furnace, the king and his advisors witnessed a miracle. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked freely among the flames, accompanied by a fourth, luminous, and divine figure. Perplexed and deeply touched by what he saw, Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace and called the three young men to come out. They emerged without a single sign of burns, without their clothes singed, and without even the odor of fire. The extraordinary event not only demonstrated the protective power of his God, but also profoundly changed the king's perspective, who began to proclaim the God of Israel as the supreme God, commanding everyone in the kingdom to respect him. This act of unwavering faith by the three friends not only preserved their lives but also strengthened Daniel and his friends' standing in the kingdom, showing everyone that true authority and protection come from a much higher source. As the dawn light bathed the Grand Babylon, it also marked the harbinger of new challenges for Daniel and his friends. Within the opulent walls of the royal palace, King Nebuchadnezzar, although covered in riches and power, was once again plagued by a disturbing dream, this time with an even more personal and alarming content. Perplexed and anxious, the king summoned again his circle of magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers, in the hope that they could unlock the secrets behind his nocturnal visions. However, as before, they failed, leaving the king in increasing agitation. It was then that he remembered the young Daniel, whose previous interpretation had illuminated the mysteries of a complex dream and secured for him a position of prestige and respect in the kingdom. Daniel was promptly called before King Nebuchadnezzar. He approached with the same humility and unwavering confidence as always, aware that his wisdom was a divine gift, not a personal achievement. Respectfully, the king shared his new vision, a colossal tree that reached to the heavens, strong and leafy, providing food and shelter for all living things on earth. However, the vision took a dark turn when a celestial figure ordered the tree to be felled, leaving only the chained trunk, transforming its owner's heart from man to animal, until 7 times had passed. The report shook the king and everyone present, who anxiously awaited Daniel's interpretation. With a heavy heart, Daniel absorbed the depth of the dream and, guided by divinity, began to explain. The majestic tree was Nebuchadnezzar himself, whose empire had grown vast and powerful, visible to the ends of the earth. The order to fell the tree symbolized a divine decree against the king, a stern warning about the supreme sovereignty of the Almighty. The king would be humiliated, expelled from among men, and would live like an animal until he recognized that it is not human authority, but divine authority, that governs the destinies of the world. Daniel sincerely and respectfully advised the king to change his ways, to practice justice, and to show mercy to the oppressed, in the hope that perhaps the catastrophe could be avoided. The revelation left Nebuchadnezzar deeply touched and worried, aware of the fragility of his earthly power in the face of divine authority. This episode not only reinforced Daniel's position as a man of great wisdom and faith, but also served as a powerful reminder to everyone in the empire about the supremacy of the divine over the temporal, setting the stage for more trials where Daniel's faith would be crucial not only to their survival, but to the moral instruction of a king and the guidance of an empire. Daniel continued, his voice resounding with authority and gravity throughout the silent hall, capturing the attention of everyone present. And now, Belshazzar, though you knew all these things, you did not humble your heart. You rose up against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house were brought before you, and you and your nobles, your concubines, and your wives drank wine in them. And you praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which they do not see, nor they hear, nor know. But the God who holds thy life and all thy ways in his hands, thou hast not glorified. Then, with the room still in a tense silence, Daniel interpreted the mysterious words on the wall. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Mene means that God numbered your kingdom and ended it. Tekel, you were weighed in the scales and found wanting. Parsin, your kingdom was divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The impact of Daniel's words was immediate and profound. Belshazzar felt the weight of the truth of these words and the inexorable destiny they foretold. The night that began with celebration and arrogance ended with the grim revelation of divine judgment. No earthly luxury or power could divert the course of the divine decree that was already in motion. Belshazzar's kingdom, as predicted by Daniel, would not last. And before the night was over, he would be killed, and the Babylonian Empire would pass into other hands. This interpretation and subsequent events reinforced Daniel's position not only as a man of deep wisdom and spiritual connection, but also as a witness to the power and sovereignty of God, whose words not only interpreted dreams, but also heralded and influenced the course of life. Of history. The memory of these events would remain an enduring testimony to the consequences of arrogance and defiance of the divine, and to the eternal vigilance of a God who, above all the kingdoms of the earth, rules with justice and truth. What a fascinating story about the power and wisdom of Daniel. If you are also impressed by this interpretation and want to see more content like this, don't forget to like the video. Your like helps us keep bringing you inspiring stories, and we will continue. At the court of the vast Persian Empire, where intrigue and power intertwined, Daniel continued to be a figure of extraordinary faith and integrity. The ordeal in the lion's den not only reaffirmed his unwavering devotion, but also solidified his place of honor under Darius's reign. The king's admiration for Daniel was palpable, and the decree that exalted Daniel's God reverberates throughout the lands, announcing the grandeur of a power that transcended kings and their empires. However, the peace that followed was always tenuous. The empire, although vast in its extent and wealth, was a mosaic of cultures and beliefs where divine power often clashed with human ambitions. Daniel's eyes, now aged by the marks of time and trials, saw beyond the royal courts and earthly decrees. His spirit was haunted by visions of distant futures and revelations that carried the weight of yet unknown empires and challenges to come. As the days passed, Daniel dedicated himself not only to his administrative tasks, but also to the study and contemplation of the sacred scriptures. He sought to understand more deeply the visions he received, many of which spoke of times of great tribulation and profound changes in the kingdoms of men. In his prayers and meditations, Daniel found the strength to face the uncertainties of the present and prepare for the realities of the future. The prophet, already a man of great age, did not allow himself to be shaken by the shadows that grew silently around his world. He knew that no matter how many empires rose and fell, true sovereignty resided with the God he served. A God who not only shaped the course of rivers and mountains, but also the destinies of men and angels. The dreams that disturbed his nights were like sealed books, full of mysteries and enigmas that he diligently sought to decipher. These revelations, filled with symbols of beasts and gigantic statues, of waters stirred by strong winds, and of figures speaking of times of trouble never before seen, were divine records of what was to come. Through the years, Daniel became a channel through which divine wisdom flowed, offering hope and warning, comfort, and a call to repentance. He was a beacon of light in times of darkness, a constant reminder that above all the transience of earthly realms rose the eternal kingdom of the Most High God. And so, among the halls of power and the silent rooms of prayer, Daniel walked with the dignity of one who knows the true source of power. His life, a testimony to God's care and promise, continued to influence kings and commoners alike, showing that even in the deepest cisterns or the highest towers, God's presence remains as the most sublime of crowns ruling over history, with hands of mercy and justice. In that twilight full of celestial colors, Daniel, although already marked by time, remained firm in his faith, a constant in his life full of turbulence and changes. The vision that unfolded before him in the silence of prayer was so vivid and powerful that the world around him seemed to fade away, leaving only the immensity of the Tigris River and the supernatural presence that manifested itself before him. The heavenly figure, resplendent and imposing, not only impacted Daniel with its appearance, but also brought words of comfort and revelation. The angel's message was not only an answer to Daniel's persistent prayers, but also an insight into the spiritual realities that influenced world events. The reference to the Prince of Persia and the support of Michael the Archangel revealed an ongoing spiritual war, a theme that runs through many of humanity's great spiritual narratives, suggesting that the battles we face are not merely physical or political, but also spiritual. The visions of symbolic beasts were loaded with deep meanings, representing empires that, through time, dominated and changed human history with their policies, wars, and revolutions. The eagle-winged lion, the ravenous bear, the agile leopard, and the terrible beast with 10 horns spoke of kingdoms that rose with strength but would eventually be supplanted by failure and corruption within. However, the culmination of Daniel's visions was the appearance of the Son of Man, a divine figure who arrived with the clouds of heaven, symbolizing a kingdom that was not like the others. This kingdom would be given to the Son of Man by the Ancient of Days, an image of eternal authority and sovereignty. The vision promised that, despite the apparent ceaseless rise and fall of earthly empires, there would be a final kingdom, established by God Himself, that would never be destroyed. Daniel, deeply touched by the visions, felt both hope and a grave responsibility. He knew that these revelations were not just for his own understanding, but messages that must be conveyed, serving as a compass for those who, in the times to come, face the turmoil of human empires and the search for the ultimate sense of justice and peace promised by God. Thus, as the night progressed and the stars shone more brightly over Babylon, Daniel remained in prayer, strengthened and renewed by the divine encounter. He was ready to continue his role not only as a wise administrator over earthly kings, but as a visionary and prophet of an eternal kingdom, whose truth resonated through the centuries. Thank you for watching this series about Daniel's life, a journey of faith, courage, and divine revelations. If you liked this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. You can also watch the story of the Apostle John, a surprising story from the Bible, a story that will make you have more time, more faith,